Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, is working with ministers to draft a new definition of Islamophobia/anti-Muslim hatred. Of course, this has sparked controversy and much debate. The former Labour MP and ex-counter-extremism czar, Lord Walney, has warned that this new definition risks introducing blasphemy laws through a back door and could have a chilling effect on free speech. Hi, I'm Emily Carver, and this is GBN Originals. Yes, so Labour has established a working group chaired by former Tory Minister Dominic Grieve to develop an official definition over the next 6 months. However, critics argue that this redefinition could stifle necessary discussions about Islamist extremism. The Labour Party's 2018 definition of Islamophobia already faced huge criticism for potentially suffocating free debate. Rayner has stated that the increase in anti-Muslim hate crimes is unacceptable, emphasising that the government is committed to creating a society where everyone feels safe. However, the challenge remains in balancing the protection of British Muslims with maintaining freedom of thought and expression for all citizens. Surely, in a free country, you should be free to criticise any religion you see fit. While Lord Walney suggests using the term anti-Muslim hatred instead of Islamophobia is best to avoid unintended consequences. He also describes Islamist terrorism as the greatest threat this country faces. Now, earlier today, we spoke to Lord Walney, the former counter-extremism advisor, and take a listen to what he had to say.
Joining us in the studio is the former counter-extremism advisor, Lord Walney. Thanks for joining us. Shall we start with this potential for an Islamophobia definition? Clearly, the government has its heart in the right place, but this could really end up being a speech law.
It could, and anti-Muslim hatred is absolutely real. Every time there is a spike of terrorist violence, or certainly in the aftermath of the 7th of October, the attacks on Muslim people just going about their lives in Britain have risen exponentially. So it is absolutely right to try to tackle this. But because, of course, Islam is a faith, the risk is that you end up criminalising effectively criticism of Islam as a religion, and we've had blasphemy laws in this country to protect Christianity back in previous centuries. We must not go back there by people in a well-meaning way trying to protect Muslim people in Britain.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I have absolutely no confidence that Angela Rayner will come up with some definition or decide upon some definition that will fit. Because I say that because Labour did adopt a very vague definition previously when they weren't in government that talked about how it's racism against the perception of Muslimness, or it was so vague, a perception of Muslimness, or oh God, I can't remember. You'll remember the wording. But it was so vague that, as you say, it could lend itself to, potentially criminalising people for just having opinions.
But look, I'm taking this as a sign of optimism because, yes, Labour in opposition in the Corbyn years made, I think, a serious mistake in adopting the definition of Islamophobia, which had been generated by, again, well-meaning people as part of an all-party group on all sides.
I mean, the forward was written by Dominic Grieve. This was written up jointly by Wes Streeting and Anna Soubry. I mean, these weren't Corbynites who came up with this definition.
No, they weren't.
These were centrist politicians.
They weren't, and it was a mistake for the reason that you set out, Emily, in that they were well-meaning people. I think there were people behind the scenes who helped draft that definition who I would not describe as well-meaning, and it effectively would have rendered Islamophobic the idea of talking about threats that of Islamists, which is a different thing to people who practice a Muslim faith, Islamists infiltrating communities, and it would have rendered the prevent definition, which has its problems in operation, but it would have rendered that Islamophobic to talk about. So the fact that there is a new process that has been kicked off by Angela Rayner, rather than the government simply adopting this definition and transposing it straight into government, that's a good thing.
OK, that is a good thing that they're working on it a little more. and that they might be moving away from that previous definition. Just to say what I was saying before, that I didn't get it out properly. Yes, the definition of Islamophobia, which Labour did adopt a few years ago, is a type of racism that targets expressions of Muslimness or perceived Muslimness. Now, to me, that could bring a lot of censorship. For example, if a woman wanted to be, or anyone wanted to be critical of the wearing of the burqa, for example, that surely is something, a perceived Muslimness, because if you see someone wearing a burqa, you assume they are Muslim. And so are you allowed to be critical of that item of clothing?
You've got, I think, what is a really important test case, which is going through at the moment, where this is prior to any definition of Islamophobia being accepted by the government. You're having the police who are prosecuting people for burning the Quran. Now, to be clear, I think it is abhorrent to do that. It is deeply disrespectful. We shouldn't be burning any books. That has very troubling connotations, but it's the difference between disapproving of it very strongly and it being illegal. And so we have to be so careful to be able to protect Muslim people who do experience hatred without effectively introducing this blasphemy law by the back door.
Now, you started this conversation saying it's very important to crack down on anti-Muslim hate. And again, in that answer, you used anti-Muslim hatred as the word you use. Would the government do well to stop using the word Islamophobia, which of course refers to, well, a religion, a set of ideas, a book, and instead use anti-Muslim prejudice, which refers to people, human beings? Is there perhaps a very important semantic choice that has been made at the start of this process that actually means we're going to be talking about criticism of ideas rather than attacks on people?
Well, my clear preference would be to stick with the current way in which governments have framed this, which is anti-Muslim hatred. There is a range of views on it. I know a number of Muslims in positions of leadership who feel similarly. It may well be that the ship has sailed on that, and if that is the case, then you have to work that bit harder to explain what is off limits here and what still, must be accepted in a liberal democracy which prides itself on its freedom of speech.
Because the government seems to be using them interchangeably. The website page on the government website is saying Islamophobia / anti-Muslim hatred. I don't believe they're interchangeable words. Surely that's number one sort of thing to find out, as Tom says.
And they're used so often in the same sort of sentence. They'll roll off the tongue saying, for example, anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. But to me, anti-Semitism refers to hatred of a people. Yeah, it's racialised. Exactly. It's talking about people. It's not criticising the Torah. No one believes if you say the Torah is a silly book or, God didn't make the world in 7 days or anything like that. No one believes you're being anti-Semitic because you're not. Whereas if you criticise things in the Quran, people could say that you're being anti-Semitic. Even if you take Islamophobic. Even if you're just taking a principled position on debating an issue. I mean, this is serious stuff.
I mean, let's not forget that there is a school teacher from Batley in Yorkshire who is still many years later in hiding because he chose to use an image of the Prophet Muhammad in his class, which is something which is offensive to Muslims. There was a question mark about whether he should have done it or not. He was clear that he was doing it in a particular context. But the idea that he has feared for his life and had to go into state-supported hiding years later is outrageous.
Well, that's, it's almost as if we already have a blasphemy law in this country. You had another child who was hauled before Muslim elders, and also the police were there as well because he scuffed a Quran at school. I mean, are we already there?
I mean, it is bonkers because, the depicting Muhammad thing is only prohibited in Sunni Islam. In Shia Islam, there are centuries of wonderful art and displays, and in Iran there are lots of depictions of the Prophet Muhammad, but just not in the Sunni places. I mean, it seems we've sort of picked a lane here and are enforcing other countries' laws. Bizarre.
Well, Lord Walney, thank you very much indeed. Well, there you have it. So do you think Islamist terrorism is the greatest threat this country faces, even greater than, for example, Putin's Russia? And do you think that actually creating a new definition of Islamophobia may open a box of problems, particularly when it comes to freedom of speech? And do you perhaps, like me, are you concerned that there may already be almost a blasphemy law in this country? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you for watching. This has been Emily Carver. Don't forget to subscribe to the GB News YouTube channel for all the latest updates and videos like these.